Tell me if this sounds familiar. You pick up the dye bottle, stare at it for a second, and put it right back in the cupboard. You just can't bring yourself to go through the mess, the smell, and the whole exhausting process again. Or maybe you grab your phone, ready to call your colorist, but before she even answers, you hang up. The thought of sitting in that chair for 2 or 3 hours, flipping through the same old magazines, sounds absolutely soul-crushing. If you're feeling this way, remember, it's not just the dye that's bothering you. It's everything that comes with it. The time, the energy, the pressure, the frustration, the constant battle to keep up with something that just doesn't feel right anymore. You want to jump off this merry-go-round, but you're just not sure if this is the right time to do it. Well, if you've ever wondered if you're finally ready to stop dyeing your hair for good, I've got 17 crystal clear signs that will make the decision a whole lot easier for you. Hi, I'm Katie from KatieGoesPlatinum.com, and I ditched the dye 7 years ago. Since that day, I have helped thousands of women from all over the world go gray from dyed hair. Today, I'm here to help you decide if you are ready to go gray as well. Are you ready? Let's get started. First, let's start with physical and practical signs that it's time to stop dyeing your hair. Take a good strong look at your hair and note if you have breakage, split ends, or hair loss. Is your hair thinning in certain areas? Maybe you rely on shine sprays, glosses, and root powders just to make sure that your hair looks good between dye jobs. Or perhaps you find that you have to spend a lot of money on keratin treatments and Brazilian blowouts just to repair the damage that you've done to your hair. By the time I reached 50, my hair was so fried and brittle that I lost clumps of it every time I showered. My hair felt like straw, and no amount of product could bring it back to life. But once I stopped dyeing, my naturally silver hair grew in thick, smooth, and healthy. And for the first time in years, maybe even decades, my hair felt strong. I have zero regrets. So I want to ask you, if you've been dyeing your hair for quite a while, have you noticed the texture changes? Because when I was in my 20s, my hair looked great, dyed or not. But by the time I reached 50, after more than 25 years, maybe even 30 years of dyeing, my hair was fried. Did you have that experience too? I would love to know. Do you find that your gray roots poke out within 2 or 3 days of getting your hair dyed? Are you sick and tired of battling the skunk stripe? Does it feel like a never-ending cycle? Do you ask yourself, do I really want to do this for 10, 20, or maybe even another 40 years? Let me tell you, there is nothing more freeing than never having to worry about your roots again. Your hair just is. When your hair is fully gray, there is no need for constant upkeep. There's no last-minute panic before an event worrying that your roots are going to show. Your roots are one less thing that you'll need to worry about, and believe me, that feeling of freedom is priceless. Speaking of freedom, maybe you're feeling resentful about all the time and effort you have to spend on your hair. You've got better things to do. Once you stop fighting your natural hair color, you no longer need to schedule your life around your hair. No more squeezing in emergency root touch-ups or dye jobs before parties, meetings, or other big events. Instead, you can fill your time with things that you actually want to do instead of things that you feel like you have to do. It's utterly delightful, believe me. Now, on a much more serious note, perhaps you're developing a reaction to hair dye. I'm talking things like itching, headaches, swollen eyes, blisters, or much, much worse. If any of these things happens to you, please don't ignore it. Dye allergies aren't just annoying, they can be very, very dangerous. And they can appear suddenly out of nowhere, even after years of coloring your hair with no issues, even with the same dye. I started experiencing intense itching and headaches the last few years I dyed my hair. And instead of thinking, well, maybe this is an allergy, which would have been the smart thing to do, I just assumed it was the price I was paying to have high quality, expensive, salon dyed hair. And since then, I have met some women who have suffered serious side effects from hair dye allergies. One woman that I know experienced such bad blistering on her scalp from having her hair dyed, she said it felt like her scalp was melting off her head. I'll leave some helpful articles and links in the video description box below on this topic, but just promise me that you will not do what I did and ignore these signs. Your health is much more important than your hair. Now, the next one is one that I think many of us can relate to. You look in the mirror one day and realize the hair color that you've been using for years just isn't working for you anymore. Something feels off. This is especially true for women who dye their hair dark brunette or black. I know this feeling all too well because for years I thought that keeping my hair dark would keep me looking youthful and vibrant, but I couldn't have been more wrong. When I look at photos of myself from my 40s, all I can think is, yikes, What was I thinking? The dark hair dye completely overpowered my face, making me look even more washed out than I usually do, which was the complete opposite of what I was hoping for. Also, as with most dark hair dyes, by the end of the month before it was time for me to go back in to get my hair colored again, the dark, cool color I had chosen would tend to fade to a warm brown, which did not suit my skin tone at all. But once my natural silver started to grow in, I was shocked in a good way. Not only did I still have a lot of my natural brunette hair left in these underlayers, but also it was cool toned, which suited me so much better. And my silver hair also cool toned, which really suited my complexion. Now, whether you're warm toned or cool toned, it doesn't really matter. I can just tell you this: Mother Nature will not give you a shade of gray hair that clashes with your complexion. Your natural color is uniquely designed to suit you, and you might just be surprised by how gorgeous it really is. Speaking of gorgeous, money is a beautiful thing, and maybe you're starting to question the costs associated with dyeing your hair. It's totally natural to reevaluate where your money is going these days, especially in these high cost of living times. And let's be honest, salon visits are not cheap. But even if you can afford it, maybe you just don't want to spend your money on salon visits or box dyes anymore. Ditching hair dye frees you from one more financial burden. And the best part? Your natural color is 100% free and it's unique to you. Want to see how much money you can save by going gray? Head on down to the video description box below where you will find a link to my free gray hair savings calculator. It's eye-opening. Now let's move on to some deeper signs that it might be time to go gray. I'm talking about the emotional and psychological signs. Maybe you're slowing down, maybe you're asking yourself, what can I cut out of my life to make my life happier and more meaningful? In other words, I'm ready to simplify my life and my routine. Let me tell you that nothing will simplify your life faster than going gray. I don't want to make you jealous, but listen, I can now go into a hair salon and be in and out of there in 30 minutes flat. Just wash, cut, and go. I can even wash my hair and air dry it if I feel like it. That was impossible for me for years while I was dyeing my hair because my damaged hair required a lot of styling and products just to make it look good. And most of us find that ditching hair dye takes a huge weight off of our shoulders, one that we might not have even realized was holding us back. But once that weight is gone, believe me, you'll notice. The next one resonates a lot with me and my friends here in Southern California and elsewhere. You try to eat organic foods, you use clean beauty products, and you care about the environment. You spend a lot of time and effort trying to reduce your impact on this planet, and then one day it hits you. Ditching hair dye better aligns with your values. No more plastic bottles in the trash, and no more toxic chemicals being poured down the drain and into our waterways. Wouldn't that be a wonderful thing? Speaking of wonderful and natural, have you seen your real hair color in years? Are you curious to see what you really look like under all that dye? When I grew my gray hair out, it really struck me that I had not seen my real hair color in over 25 years. I was thrilled to see it again. But because I dyed my hair all those years, I missed out on all the fun. I missed out on seeing my hair change over time. I missed out on the beautiful salt and pepper phase that so many women go through. I really wish I'd gotten to experience that. I guess it's just a lesson learned. Now, before we move on to even bigger and even more profound signs that it might be time for you to go gray, I just have to ask, if you like this video, if you find it helpful, fun, or informative, will you please do me a favor and go down and hit the like button and subscribe if you'd like to see my future videos? I would really appreciate it. Thanks. The next 5 signs that it might be time to get rid of hair dye were contributed to me by the members of the Silver Revolution Facebook group, and I have to tell you, please don't skip these because, like I mentioned earlier, these are very profound reasons and they might give you pause. You went through chemo and your hair grew in gray, and instead of hating it like you might have thought you would, you find to your surprise that you actually really like it. And you start to wonder, what would it be like if I just let my hair stay gray? Many women have written to me who have gone through chemo and are surprised to find that they actually really like their natural color. Not only do they like it, they love it and they want to keep it. But this is a deeply personal decision. If you have a friend or a loved one who's gone through cancer treatments and their hair has fallen out and grown back in gray, and you think it looks great, that's wonderful, but please do not pressure her to keep it that way. That's a decision that she has to make for herself. Whether or not she chooses to embrace her gray hair, the most important thing is that she feels like herself again on her own terms. But what if the pressure to dye starts long before we even ever get our first gray hair? Maybe you have daughters, granddaughters, nieces, or other young women in your life, and you worry that they'll grow up believing that they have no choice but to dye their hair the second they start to go gray. I don't have daughters myself, but as a mother, I know how important it is for young people to understand that they have choices. I, and I'm sure many of you, want the next generation of women to understand that they are free to embrace their own natural beauty without any pressure. But it's not just about the pressure that we put on ourselves or that society places on young women. It's also about something even bigger, our long-term health. If you've been feeling worried about the health risks associated with hair dye, you're not alone. There are more than a few studies that have suggested a possible link between dark hair dyes and cancer, although research is still ongoing. As the book True Roots points out, when Jackie Onassis died from lymphoma, many people pointed out studies had linked dark hair dyes to that particular form of cancer. Some people also think that Elizabeth Taylor's continued use of very dark hair dyes could have led to her brain tumor. One of my viewers recently shared a story about a friend who spent decades dyeing her hair very dark, right up until she was diagnosed with brain cancer. After her passing, her brain was donated to medical science and used in a clinical trial looking into the connection between chemicals and brown hair dyes and certain cancers. Stories like this are a powerful reminder of why it's important to be mindful of what we put on our bodies. And if you've ever had that nagging thought in the back of your head, is this safe for me? You are not alone. Now I need to ask, have you ever worried about the long-term effects of using hair dye? Let me know your thoughts below, because this is such an important conversation. On a personal note, I had heard rumors about dark hair dye and the risk of cancer for years, yet I still chose to keep dyeing my hair. And I often have to ask myself why. But it is not a great idea to look back with regret. Instead, let's try to focus on what we can control now. And that brings us to sign number 13. Maybe you're at a point in your life where you need to have something in your life that you can control, something that is just for you, something that nobody else can interfere with. Taking control of your hair routine and letting go of what no longer serves you could be the first step in reclaiming control of other aspects of your life. But what happens when we don't take that step? We've all seen it. Women in our lives, our mothers, our grandmothers, our friends, who cling to the dye bottle no matter what. Even when they're in poor health, even when it's the last thing they should be worried about, they still stress over their roots. If you've witnessed that and it's given you pause, that's a clear sign to stop and ask yourself, do I really want that for myself? And that's the real question, isn't it? Am I dyeing my hair because I love the way it looks, or because I feel like I have no choice? And if you're starting to rebel against that feeling of not having a choice, that is another clear sign. Maybe it's time to be rebellious again. Maybe it's time to break free from that expectation. Maybe you're ready for a change. And honestly, what is more rebellious than ditching hair dye and going against the grain and embracing your natural silver hair? And maybe you're at a point where you no longer see a woman with gray hair and think, why would she do that? And instead you think, maybe I'd like to do that. That's another clear sign. Or maybe one day it simply all clicks. You hit your breaking point. The weight of some or all of the things we've discussed today hits all at once, and you think to yourself, no more, I am done. But here's the thing, deciding to stop dyeing is just the first step, because once you take that leap, you're going to face a few unexpected challenges. Things that can shake your confidence and things that nobody warned you about might happen once you go gray. And if you want to go into this journey fully prepared, you need to know exactly what to expect. So in my next video, I am breaking down everything you must be able to handle if you want to go gray, so you can navigate this transition with confidence.